So we start. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our online attendees. Thank you so much for being here online today and for all your support during the conference. Today, it's the third and last day of the conference, and it's my great pleasure today to announce our third keynote speaker, Associate Professor Janika Leoste from Tallinn University of Technology, Estonia. Janika is a renowned expert and researcher in educational robotics. Currently, she's leading the Creativity Matters IT Didactics Research Group, and also she's leading the interdisciplinary educational innovation collaboration cluster called STEAM for EDU education at Tallinn University of Technology. One of her research areas, of course, MoMM focuses on using robots integrated with the learning and education that we're going to hear more about it today. So without further ado, I hand it over to Janika to hear about her amazing research. Thank you, Janika.
Thank you, Pari, so much. And I think I would start sharing my screen now. 1 second. Dear colleagues, thank you for the opportunity to be here. As I told, I'm Janika Leoste from Tallinn University of Technology. And today, during my presentation, I will share with you some Creativity Matters IT Didactics Research Group preliminary results and also future directions on using telepresence robots in the context of higher education teaching. I would say that the telepresence robot could be seen as one of the means paving the way for more flexible and more space-independent teaching and learning in higher education. As the telepresence technology, on the other hand, I would say, is currently quite immature and its price level is not yet reasonable, I think it could create a nice opportunity for academy-business collaboration, especially when product development takes into consideration the requirements set by higher education didactics. We all have experienced various difficulties when conducting emergency remote teaching under the COVID-19 restrictions. For example, facing low engagement of remote students when they are mediated via a teleconferencing system, or for getting online students during synchronous hybrid teaching when most students attend physically in classroom. Occasionally, our students and we ourselves as well have reported of feeling of social isolation because it is quite difficult to immerse yourself to another location when you do not have full control of your senses and the body movement at the other location. Although we increasingly spend time in the virtual world, mediated via various displays of PCs, laptops, smartphones, and the younger generation has become quite used to it. There are still some old school guys like you or me, I hope, who prefer coming together. And there are some still relevant social cultural theories, such as Vygotsky's zone of proximal development or Piaget's cognitive development, that suggest that people need physical proximity of other people in order to learn. In other words, teachers and learners use their body language and their senses to create context and meaning for the things learned. Traditionally, physical proximity has been an aspect of social presence, with the latter referring to feeling as if being present with other persons, accessing their thoughts and emotions via spoken language and body language. Studies in education suggest that the stronger feeling of social presence we have, the more engaged we are in the learning process, resulting in better learning outcomes. So you can probably see the problem I'm speaking about. In telemediated learning, many subtle cues, almost all body language is lost, and this may have negative impact on student learning outcomes. The problem is an important one, I think, and let's discover today together if telepresence robotics can offer some solutions to this problem that seems insolvable at the first sight. In our research group, we refer to this problem as PIZNT, to be present and yet not be there. Is it possible? In this research, we are comparing communication via telepresence robots with in-person communication and with communication via teleconferencing solutions such as Zoom. Do telepresence robots enable more richer distance communication compared to teleconferencing? I think it's up to the user, or is it more similar to in-person communication? I will stop sharing the slides for a second, and let's take just a minute. And as you see, currently I'm giving a presentation from my home office, but let's move 30 minutes by car to Tallinn, to our university, and let's see what is happening at my workplace. So this is the interface of one telepresence robot called Double. And now I'm going to call in. You see, I have to choose the camera and microphone and everything. And I'm here. Oh my God, I see even some colleagues. And Institute director just closed his door. Kalle, could you come here? Okay, let's see. Hello. Hello. Hello, Katrin. Hello, Kalle. How are you? Okay. Okay, maybe I should just go to the mirror for a second to give idea that I'm not tricking and it's not a video game, yes? Okay. Okay, here's the mirror. Here's the mirror. Okay. Now I should turn myself. Okay. Do you believe me? No, stop doing jokes on telepresented people. Thank you, and I will park safely now the robot, and let's move. Let's go back to the slides. Okay. Today, we are not talking about human-robot interaction, and also we are not going to focus on autonomous robots and their algorithms that determine the outcomes of their decision-making. But instead, we are looking at technology acceptance, inclusive education, and uncertainty of life. Also the pain of change in daily practices, and to make it even more intriguing, about being cloned and teleported to a robotic body. But let's start from basics. We usually know what kind of people we prefer to work together or hang out with. But have we really considered what characteristics should have the people that use robotic telepresence when collaborating or spending time with us? Before proceeding with this question, let us clarify what is a telepresent robot. In 1980, the guy on the screen, Marvin Minsky, used the word telepresence when he referred to manipulating remote physical objects via a teleoperation system. In addition, telepresence is also defined as a feeling of being present at a physical location that is different from the location of the perceiver's own physical body. A telepresence robot is thus a robotic system that, although capable of performing certain autonomous actions, is operated remotely by a human person for the purposes of doing something over a distance. A telepresence robot is used when its operator's real physical presence is difficult or impossible for various reasons. For example, to saving traveling time and expenses, or enabling presence in case of illness, disability, epidemic, snowfall, or other circumstances. In education, this something that is done via telepresence robots is mostly communication. But we must remember that even in the higher education context, we are used to taking granted the autonomy of a human body and its features, namely its ability to provide use with vision, hearing, and other senses, combined with the ability to act based on these senses. For example, if you like the speaker and we want to hear or see them better, we can move closer. Or if we don't like the speech, we can leave the room. But this is just a simplified view. As I said earlier, human communication is based on subtle cues that we as humans are able to perceive and express. Most of us can determine in a few seconds if we like the person we are communicating with, if we trust them, if we consider them valuable, etc. These non-verbal subtle cues, a part of body language, are actually one of the cornerstones of our civilization, as they help us to bind the verbal message into the pattern of reality. Based on these cues, we choose our friends, make business deals, and elect our governments and our partners in life. So, when we look at the current world of telecommunication solutions, including telepresence robots, and when we compare what we need to what these devices are able to mediate, then we can see limits everywhere. At least for now, telecommunication is quite limited in mediating the rich variety of non-verbal human communication. We must understand that these limitations influence the behavioral possibilities people have when being mediated through a telepresence robot, or when facing someone who is only partially present, someone who is telepresent. Another limiting aspect of telepresence robots is their appearance. Communication is not influenced only by the abilities of our bodies. Our opinions of other people are also shaped by their appearance and behavior. The research points out that in collaboration with robots, people tend to prefer the robots who have anthropomorphic features and who act like people do. This means basically that people prefer to work with robots whose behavior and movements are quite predictable and conform to already existing social norms. These individual preferences have strong influence on how people evaluate the usefulness of telepresence robots. So, this is the first paper our research group wrote on this matter. And to be honest, we didn't have our telepresence robotic lab yet. Only one double robot was introduced via hybrid workshop, and we haven't any personal deep experience yet this time. It was just less than 1 year ago. Based on the demonstrations of technology providers, we could say that we had quite positively biased mindset before starting digging in Google Scholar database. Before moving to the results, I could say that most of the problems that were described in the papers during the last 3 months of active pilot implementation in real teaching and learning settings, what we have had here at our university, I would say that we have experienced all these problems, all of them, and even much, much more. And I can tell you that reading about the failures, it is much less painful than being in the middle of this failure situation when you are giving a real class to the students. Talking about the reasons, I would say that current research is built basically on feelings rather than solid longitudinal arguments, but let's just check out some quotations. Many of the works actually did not state clearly the reasons for using telepresence robots at all. And the same thing happened in Estonian national TV last week, as seen on the photo, where in the morning TV, hosts, after reading our short statement in the daily newspaper, declared that they see no advantage of them compared to the traditional teleconferencing. And actually, maybe it's partially true as we are talking about emerging technology, but let's just check some quotes. Okay. And what we met in several papers, the telepresence robots were described as tools that made education possible in certain circumstances. And always there's a good question, okay, but if there is no circumstances anymore, do we need these robots then? And here you see that it might help in homeschooling. And on the next slide, you see that maybe it can help to teach nurses to become nurses who are able to consult patients via teleconferencing system. And to be honest, some of our research group members were yesterday in a hospital to facilitate a similar experiment where the communication was organized between the nurse and patient in the hospital ward using a telepresent robot. I wouldn't like to comment about these challenges and failures part, but I would say that the audience was extremely positive, and we will continue with our experimentation. But now let's move to the strengths of these robots. And not surprisingly at all, I would say that all these strengths of this method are relevant in the context of comparison with computer-based online learning methods and are connected to the aspect of a student having an embodied agent present in the classroom. And because of that, they both, telepresence operators and their peers, have better sense of social presence. Being personally telepresented student at my Spanish classes this year from Finland, from Spain, and even from Frankfurt Airport, I can actually confirm the following quote by the young that I felt as I was there. It's a quite strange feeling because you will get fake memories while being telepresented. But let's move further, and now let's start talking about weaknesses. To put it straightforward and shortly, something that happened yesterday also. If you do not have enough high quality internet in both ends, forget the telepresence and switch to the Zoom immediately. Actually, it is hard to find a paper where people do not claim about connectivity issues. And various problems with hearing, seeing and speaking have made it difficult for these telepresence robot operators to communicate in a classroom, and of course it leads to frustration. When you have to re-establish your connection third time during the 10 minutes time frame because the connection fails, you actually are already embarrassed enough because of distributing the classroom with fake optimistic announcements from the robot. Janika Leoste is calling in. Or even if your technical infrastructure is quite okay, you still might feel quite stupid during the coffee break, as you have to go to charge your robotic body, not to have a nice cup of coffee with others. And actually also a joke happened to my Spanish colleague because of this charging thing. I took the robot into the charging station, and the colleague didn't know that she can actually drive out from the station in any moment. And then she was patiently waiting in the corner, and I was wondering why doesn't he come to the lesson again? So let's see, there are different things what could happen. But when talking more about challenges that might influence the teaching and learning process, actually there are thousands of tiny obstacles. But in my opinion, and noted also by Lei, as you see on the screen, the difficulties in perceiving the environment and distances from objects could make it difficult to be polite and follow the social norms. As polite human, we do it like every day, we don't notice it. And let's move to the social norms and everything in a minute, but in case you are interested what happened in this paper, after every summary, I also have for you one summarizing slide if you don't want to go to the paper. But let's move to the next topic. And is there any use of them in higher education context? As you see, I have been quite critical so far, but it might be surprising, but actually the usefulness, although it's extremely modest, actually encourages us to make the next step and turn to our higher education teachers at Tallinn University of Technology. And it is quite clear that the telepresence robot, despite being called a robot, is not as much a robot, but a physical avatar combined with a layer of teleconferencing technology for mediating a single person or social agent over the distance to the people who happen to be present in some tangible environment and who for some reason just want to walk and talk and to have a shoulder pet and eye contact and to feel the smell of perfume or to perceive the surroundings and the body language of other people, and also to submit to the social norms of the physical human world. Just instead of opening a Zoom session and some computer display in order to continuously sit for hours in front of a camera, as we do now, looking at tiny portraits or black squares that represent their colleagues. So I would say that telepresence robots allow people to sneak into in-person meetings. And in our second paper, we organized 4-hour workshop where participants were provided first with general information about telepresence robots, and then through group work, they experimented with the Telepresence robot and identified suitable scenarios for using Telepresence robots in higher education. As we just presented this paper with my colleague Alexei in Robot 2022 in Zaragoza last week, I used this slide from his presentation where there is a scene that for the most participants, the most important Telepresence robots feature were ability to move, mediate speaking and hearing, to look down and keep eye contact. And I remind you that these people saw the Telepresence robot first time, and here you see that how their perceptions changed even after 4-hour workshop. Although the participants imagined what teaching methods could lead to the best gains in learning with Telepresence robots, I would say that these all were just hypotheses, because we started really experimenting only 3 months ago. And at least in summer, they thought that the robots are useful in group work, problem learning and role play, but it could be challenging to be used in laboratories where the manual work is expected. And in addition, Telepresence robots can be used for inspection purposes or for giving tours of certain areas such as museums. And now, encouraged by these results that already gave us some insight of bringing a Telepresence robot into an higher education classroom and not being discouraged by fact that the double robot screen, you saw also the picture before, got broken during this session, we started preparations how to bring Telepresence robots in an higher education classroom. And let's imagine that you do not want to move your lessons to Zoom, but on the other hand, you might be willing to allow them to use a robot avatar for serious reasons, of course, just because it seems that you don't have the chance a lot when giving lessons. And yeah, well, it seems exciting. And after the first excitement has passed, you will understand that you are having a problem, and actually a big one, as demonstrated now on the next figure. Namely, the in-person students won't quite understand what they are dealing with. Is it a person, a robot, or a robotic person, half robot? And remember, people do not trust robots if they are not sure if the robot's behavior is predictable. And I just created this slide myself, but as I'm also familiar with autonomous robots, so you see, this is a difference. Maybe we don't expect, but most of Telepresence robots still are fully controlled by driver, so their movement smoothness is dependent on how often did you play computer games when you was a child, for example. And also, we don't know clearly the intentions of the robot. And we have a saying in our research group that robot went crazy. So do you understand? Although we try to control the movement and everything, sometimes the robot loses connection and it just goes crazy. And then you don't know what to expect. And also what we can talk about trust, if there might be a situation that robot might go crazy. Would you like to take this robot to the hospital, or maybe as a researcher, but in case you are a patient? I'm not so sure about that actually. Okay, but anyways, having these questions on mind, we conducted now a workshop. The teachers from 8 Georgian universities who were accidentally visiting Estonia. And these results were published in this paper, and the paper will be online in a few days also. And it is interesting actually to bring out that for our Georgian colleagues, compared computer-based distance learning methods and telepresence robots, the robots were seen important in keeping social relations between classroom participants, both students and teachers, and in enhancing students' 21st century skills. And also, they are listed several challenges and concerns. It still seemed that at least most of them, these Georgian universities could be ready to accept these telepresence robots as a teaching and learning tool, and they considered it even maybe being useful. So if you are interested in results from this article, so there is also a slide about that. But with this research, we understood that people will start having a lot of questions when they meet with telepresent persons. And first, there are plenty of questions that are related to the potential behavior of the telepresence robot as a robot, not a person, but as a robot. And now when moving to the next slide, you could also notice a robomorphism. So it means that we attribute human senses to robot because the person is somewhat planted into robot in the given moment. And here are just some example questions. Actually, people tend to ask if they meet a telepresence robot very first time, like, is it recording? Is it spying on me? Does it make photos? How quickly is it able to move? Can you show how quickly you can move? Or how well does it see? Or how well does it hear? And does it have any manipulatives? And where the manipulatives are hidden? So there are a lot of questions people ask when they meet first the telepresent robot. But now there are questions that people cannot form if they are not familiar with telepresence robots. Similarly, people without previous experience have difficulties in understanding the consequences of telepresence robots features. And as you see, is it possible for it to regulate its height for better eye contact, but also maybe it's not so powerful if the robot is only has a height of 1 meter and your professor is considered as a midget and you have like 2-meter basketball player. I don't know. Or is it possible to zoom in? Actually, people don't know that as you have a robotic body, you have some superhuman capabilities, and you even don't expect the robot to have these capabilities if you're not familiar with the features of telepresence robots. And also how many cameras and all this type of stuff. And now, being quite brave after this Georgian University professors, we decided to move further because so far we have examined the situation through the eyes of teachers, but what about students? And actually, this question led us to the next experiment that is also described in the article that is part of this conference proceedings. And yes, for that experiment, I took all my teacher's courage and decided to introduce the robot to my international MA level students in the very first class of the course in this fall. And also I asked one of my Spanish colleagues to play telepresented student, and I asked some of my colleagues to be in the backpack of the robot. It means that this is feature similar to Stream, that is, you can join the ongoing call of the robot. And as the maybe most interesting finding from this experiment, I would like to bring out that Although from the point of view of the students, it was considered convenient to participate in a class where telepresence robots is used, yet at least half of the physically present students in our experiment didn't feel comfortable when contacting a telepresent person or being approached by them. It's not part of this article, but what happened this fall was that, for example, one student refused to talk to telepresented professor, also telling, I'm an old school guy, I don't talk with robots, please come here, let's have a direct contact. Okay, so actually even one participant in our experiment found that such contact could be uncomfortable or alienating. And now, yes, this is an article, but every article has something that is not written there. 2 weeks ago, I had the last class with same students. And in the morning, one of the students wrote me that she becomes sick. And so I arranged the robot for her. It was the second time because nobody wanted to use the robots during the whole semester. And she attended from the bed and was coughing, but she still managed to move around the class with the robot and assess work of her peers because it was exam. And all her classmates were now extremely friendly and positive towards her. So there is something to think about, that if you just conduct these small workshops, we never know what are the real feelings and expectations. So definitely there's a need for more longitudinal study to understand the real expectations towards the robots. And also here, there are some summary slides about that. But now let's move further and do you understand that this question started to bother us? And as our first experiment that was conducted now in the real learning and teaching conditions, we gathered some hints that these telepresence persons and physically present person follow certain social norms when communicated with each other, but we had no idea if these social norms are they the same as those between physically present people. For example, how do people perceive telepresent person and their robotic bodies in the terms of physical proximity? And that led us to the next experiment that is described in the paper that is currently under revision. And here we investigated a certain aspect of spatial behavior, physical proximity, or also it's called interpersonal distance. And we simulated communication situations to understand these questions. And our theoretical framework was from Hall's theory about that. And in this study, actually, the research question was extremely simple. We wanted to know how close will people come to a telepresent robot in a stage communication situation. And at the beginning of each experiment, the robot was at least 3 meters from the physically present participants. And then we examined how close the communication parties moved towards each other during their interaction. And the scenario was about communication between a professor and a student, and the topic was homework that is needed to be done or not done at all. And all participants had to try both roles and both forms of presence, physical and via robot. And also we rearranged the pairs of participants based on their previous acquaintance level. And it came out that the staged academic status and previous relationship played no role on the choice of communication distance, but however, there were remarkable gender-based differences. For example, male participants chose a shorter average distance for communication with telepresence persons compared to the female participants. And although the persons having previous experience with computer games also chose shorter communication distance. And I would say that in communication with a telepresent person, the distance is kept quite similar to a typical communication between physically present persons. Or in other words, the telepresent persons might be perceived as a real, although mediated via technology. And I consider this finding is extremely important because it indicated that the telepresent person might be considered as a normal partner in human communication, because we all know that usually robots are not considered as a normal partners because their own intelligence is not at that level yet. And actually, the next one is quite fruitful example I can bring from last month, where one of my colleagues moderated physical international project meeting via robot, and Turkish colleagues came and gave her cheek kisses. Can you imagine? Cheek kisses to the robot screen. And of course, they didn't know the fact that my colleague had also 3 Italian male professors in her robot backpack in that situation. So we are moving closer to the end of the speech, and now I would like to talk a bit about our future research. So during the fall of the 2022, our research group has been busy on piloting telepresence robots in various teaching and learning settings to be able to offer appropriate didactics for higher education teachers interested in adding telepresence as one complementary layer to their possible modalities next to the physical and online presence. And so far, our research group has been focused mostly on teaching and learning settings, but we are about to entering also the telehealth and service sector for creating possible usage scenarios for telepresence robots. And when developing these usage scenarios, we need to take into consideration the following aspects. So, what is the situation or context where the telepresence robot will act? What is the readiness of the technical infrastructure that ensures normal functioning of telepresence robots? And what is the readiness of the physical environment where the telepresence robots should move? For example, carpet can be a problem, space for movement can be a problem. Are there obstacles on the floor? For example, wires can be challenging. Are there any moving objects in the room? Is the room big enough? Are the door sills low enough? Are the doors self-opening? Is the elevator adjustable for the telepresence robot requirements? There are a lot of issues we have to solve in the environment before we can bring them in. And also, the list is not final. There are more questions the future research could give answers, hopefully. For example, what is the social cultural readiness of people and potential driver? Or how would the telepresent person be treated by others? Is there any roboracism, for example? So I don't know. Or what didactical approaches are suitable? How to adjust existing teaching methods, and what are the must-have things we have go through before we start this implementation. And of course, this is not a complete list of aspects we could and should research, because by saying this, I'm telling that implementing telepresence robots in higher education would require a lot of planning, brainstorming, acceptance of change, just like with any other novel technology. And just like with any other novel technology, we must first focus on the most important question. Why? Why we are doing that at all? So the why should we consider of using telepresence robots if there are so many limited conditions right now? In my opinion, we really do not have much choice, because rising energy cost and impact on environment and traveling, necessity to engage everyone, people with disabilities, Also, an aging population, less teachers, requires us to prefer alternatives that are greener, but on the same time, to prefer alternatives that support the richness of human communication. And yes, I know when looking at today's telepresence robots, it sounds controversial when I say that we would still like to keep human touch, even if the human is thousands of kilometers away. But then again, the technology is just emerging. And when we look at the possibilities that can be offered by robotic bodies, for example, Boston Dynamics, it is not very hard to imagine a telepresence robot that can be used for giving lectures, attending post-conference social dinners, and why not visiting a nightclub in the future. This is a technology that we really need to try out and examine. Maybe it is a better choice than forcing everyone into metaverse. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. But in my opinion, it's my personal opinion, telepresence robots are promising as they complement our powers instead of replacing us, and they let us to continue living in the real world when our health, distance, or other reasons would keep us down. However, before starting to trust the telepresence technology and making it mainstream, we need more research on its positive and negative aspects, on its empowering and weakening influence. We really need to know more if this helps us to live a more human life or not. So let's ask again. Are telepresence robots here to stay? Telepresence robot is not an autonomous robot because you are always inside the robot. So it's half a robot, half a human. And it is a teleoperated robotic body with extremely limited amount of senses operated by a human being. At the moment, telepresence robots are controlled by the operator, but some of them already are be able to drive some predetermined routes like social assistants. And many telepresence robots are vulnerable and can be harmed when internet infrastructure malfunctions, as their movement depends on cloud services. As the technology is an emerging one, there is a dire need for designing, piloting, and describing specific use cases for different sectors: education, healthcare, services, including must-have influencers. There are need for different scenarios. A telepresence robot could become useful for you if you need to teleport briefly to a distant location where you need to be and where the people are not keen on having a teleconference. But it would also become handy if you would like to have some independence when familiarizing yourself with the room, observe other people, or just move around from one group of people to another. Maybe in the future, the robotic body could mediate human body language, including the pat on the shoulder. Who knows? And as of today, telepresence robots are suitable for emergency remote teaching and learning and for highly valued specialists of international level. So they can temporarily clone them with the freedom to move around in some place far away from their homes. But tomorrow, telepresence robots could become just another form of the person's presence, chosen and used when needed. I hope my talk gave you all some thoughts. It doesn't matter if you are for the telepresence robots or against them. Both of these approaches are valuable in understanding the future, I think. And finally, yet importantly, I would like to thank all these people of our research group. Their names are listed on the slide, who have been involved in this experimentation of ours during this year. And Okay, there is one more slide for telepresence robots. Maybe we are just too lazy to take off our pajamas while going to another consortium meeting or scientific conference. You never know. So I stop here. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Janika. That was amazing, very enlightening talk, and we really enjoyed it. And thank you for the tour of your university. That was amazing. Before I have many questions, but I think I'm gonna first ask the audience to, yes, Gabby? Yes, please, go ahead.
So, Janika, this was really a great talk. I'm also very much thrilled by this topic. And as you said, maybe the future will have even more advanced embodiments. You probably know the movie Surrogates, which is a science fiction movie with Bruce Willis. So there are really human embodiments that are actually better than the real human beings. So maybe this is the future. We don't know if it's for good or bad. But my question would be, there are so many challenges. There are all the technical, mechanical challenges and how to best operate the robot. There are questions about human-computer interaction. There are questions requiring knowledge from sociology, from psychology, legal aspects. I'm really wondering, because this is a truly, in my opinion, a truly interdisciplinary topic. How can we as researchers best address this topic? For example, if you would like to have a PhD student working on this topic, he or she must be specialized in one of the disciplines, but also address the others. And we know the problem that if you're not really working in one core field, then you probably might not be very well recognized. The others would say, yes, it's good, but it's weak in that aspect. So my true question is, how can you do research in such a truly interdisciplinary topic? I think no topic at the moment is more interdisciplinary than what you're working on. And that's very challenging. And my question is, how are you coping with this challenge? Sorry, I'm having a little bit of a cold, so my voice is a little bit problematic.
Thank you. The answer is really simple. You have to have interdisciplinary research group. And of course, it's quite challenging to have all disciplines in your research group, because we know how research group are formed. You still need some funding and so on. So what you can do, actually, what we have done here in Estonia, we have strongly related our research to study development. So we are partly financing from study development, and we can try out everything in real teaching. And at the same time, as we are partly financed from study development, we buy in expertise. We buy in expertise from different interdisciplinary experts. So we have people from educational sciences. We have really good experts from psychology. We have robot engineers. We have IT didactics people, we have coding people, but yeah, it's a challenging. And now talking about this PhD research, we just got 2 freshmen, 2 PhD students, and their field could be extremely narrow. So one of our PhD students will research on technical limitations of these robots. And this is a challenge we are going to solve next year. We definitely have to contact these manufacturers, what they are thinking about when creating these so challenging robots. And another PhD has a topic of didactics. So how teachers could teach while being telepresented, because although students like more this telepresent stuff because it's like a computer game, I would say that we miss teachers, because teachers are under risk, especially teachers over 60 years, and we still have them a lot of in our academy. And there's just one sentence I can say, that if you have old school teacher not having active teaching methods, not taking benefit of, I don't know, eye contact or something, just giving lectures, I just can say, taking this old school guy to the telepresence robot, it doesn't make his lesson any better. So we're just observing what is happening. So if it was answer, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. There is a question from Daniel on the chat. He's asking how loudly are people talking to these to telepresent people, more like with a present person or like while talking on the phone?
Thank you. It's a really good question. First, you have to imagine, as you saw this real presentation, how people were talking to me. So I can regulate my sound level via robot, but I have no idea how loudly I talk. So I have to ask, is it sufficient? And actually they respond related to my sound, if you understand. The biggest challenge is I don't understand how loudly I speak. So they just speak back to me. But if you ask, can I give a lecture in the huge hall? It's dependent on the technical feature of Telepresence robot. How good is a speaker? What is the maximum sound? And there is nothing bad if you just add some extra, microphone like you do as a normal person. So I would say you will be able to talk with the voice of normal person, and then they talk back to you.
We have another question. They are thanking you for this wonderful. May I ask, can students use the robot for learning remotely for future study? Will your lab research on more multimodality of the robot, gesture, posture?
We are going to have extremely interesting experiment precisely in 2 weeks. If you want to observe this experiment, just write me, buy a ticket to Estonia, and that's something we are going to do, lab experiment. But as I told, we also intensively benefit from real teaching and learning settings. And what will happening there? Remember our previous study that we were interested how people treat robots, but now it's vice versa. So actually we are going to have a group of people, and then different type of robots will approach to this group of people, and they have to communicate already via written form. Also, you have to share your screen as a robot to show something, then they have to show you something. So that's like more normal situation as we have experienced during our real class experiments, and we are going to observe it, and we are going to observe the posture and gestures and everything. There will be automatic observation, video observation, human observation, post interviews. There will be everything. So if you're interested, come to Estonia and be part of our study. And if not, then you have to wait for half an hour to when we get the paper out. Yes, we are going to do that, but we continue with real-time experiments because it was useful, and you can ask in January already the report on this study development. It's not a paper, it's just a report. I think we can share it.
Thank you. Any other question from audience? They are thanking you. I have many questions, but we have a few minutes left. I don't know which one I have to choose. More important one. One thing is, we are now having so many new technologies that we are using, innovation, VR, AR, IoT, wearables. Have you thought of kind of a hybrid, using any of these technologies and combine it with what you are doing?
Thank you. Actually, I have been creating didactics, and I would say that the biggest challenge for us is cognitive overload, because as a humans, yes, we can empower ourselves with different modalities, but in the end of the day, our brain will get tired because we don't understand where we are, whether I'm here, whether I'm in your conference, whether I'm in my college via this Telepresence robot. So although the technologies are so powerful, although emerging, I think that now the human brain gives us the limitation, and then we should rather focus on these human characteristics. So we should benefit complementary, but we should value the most the moment I can go and shake your hand, Barry. I would like to do that. thank you for inviting me
Hopefully
here.
soon we could do.
Yes.
Another quick question, because I looked at your publication, you have worked with primary school level and higher education level. So based on your experience, what was the key differences you noticed in their perceptions and acceptance?
As I work closely also kindergarten teachers, as one of my course I'm giving is integrating robotics in kindergarten, because in Estonia everybody in kindergarten is doing robotics already. It's considered normal. I would say that small children notice different things. And also it doesn't matter if you change the mediating layer. You notice the traffic light because you are in hurry to your lecture, but the children notice trees and birds, and so that's something that we should be research. What do you notice? Because it doesn't matter if it's a real world or is it a virtual world. Based on our age, we see totally different things, and we are so stuck on this theoretical knowledge, if you know these knowledge theories. But now what is suggested us by European Commission and all these calls we have, scientific calls, they ask us also to deal with this procedural knowledge, because there is something you just don't feel. As I mentioned, you don't feel the failure of using Telepresence robot if you're not giving the real-time lecture and if your internet connection just stops working. So more real-time experiences. Children are not in their dreams, they are in reality, and they enjoy also the real world. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So again, thank you, Janika. Really, we appreciate everything. It was great, interesting talk. And thank you everyone for attending. So we have to finish here, and then we will have a short break and our sessions will start soon. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Janika.
Thank you.